What's up, y'all? We are out here at Issaquah State Parks or something like that, and we're at a little skate area. I'm gonna show you guys this, and we'll talk to you about physical conditioning and how to separate different body parts from any activity you may do to focus on a video you may want, a subject you may want. So we're going to discuss what happens when we overuse certain areas, and then what happens when we train certain things versus actually making it so we might be hindering something else and not even training. Like when we're training for fights and stuff. When we're training for fights and stuff, we use like all of our body, so it's hard to actually train for something else. And when you want to train for something like swimming, you train to swim. You don't train to kick balls and stuff. So it matters like what you're training. You can see a lot of the old boxers, I don't know how strong they really were, but they didn't use a lot of weight training and stuff. And the weight training, it gets in the way. Like when I'm beating my hands to the point that they're swollen and bones are out of place and stuff like that gets in the way of me being able to push weights, move a racquetball, swing a golf club, anything like that. And then I have to start managing my body time. Because if I'm breaking my leg, I've only got so many days I can use my leg, or so many minutes or hours a day I can use my leg. And if I'm breaking my wrist, I've only got so many things I can do, so often do that. So you gotta start limiting what you do if you do a lot of things. Like even if you do drumming and stuff, you can isolate that. And when you get really far in that, and you get to like deathcore and stuff like that, it's like worse than running. Or they should put that in the Olympics. You're more than an athlete if you can play some of that stuff. But that gets in the way. Like I get to the point where I can't move and stuff like that. Sometimes I literally have to go train myself to walk because I've spent years doing something else like fighting or drumming, and my body doesn't know how to walk anymore. The legs don't know how to go out like this because the legs are used to doing that or doing that. Doing all sorts of cool martial arts stuff. But I have to balance all that stuff out because, it gets in the way. When my leg stops moving, then that's it. I've got to do everything else around that leg. And, well, they pulled up on here for a minute, didn't they? Yeah. Anyways, yeah. So that gets in the way of stuff. And your biggest problems seem to come from the neck. No one ever mentions the neck, but some people will mention the elbows, the shoulders, and the knees. Your ankles get in the way too, especially once you start kicking stuff. Like until you beat that ankle into a beating stick, you don't really you don't get much out of that. Couple hits and you're limping for 3 days at first. So there's not much there, and you've got to work on that and develop it and stuff. Develop it. So then that gets in the way too, because you're like limping for days at a time, and then you go back and do it once it's healed because you want to get better at it, and you're limping for a few more days. And the same stuff happens with drumming. Like I'm not sure where my initial imbalances or injury type things came from, to be honest, because by the time I started getting involved in stuff real heavily, I was involved in a lot of stuff, and I just started doing it a lot more at that point, or combining it all together rather than doing one at a time. But I find that I've been, and I'm still working on this, so this will suit anyone differently. than me, especially depending on your sport. Like, because who's out there doing what I'm doing and training what I'm doing, right? I'm training to cut down bush with machetes in the jungle and stuff. I'm training to, you know, protect myself, and I'm training not so much drums anymore. And guitar actually has a little bit of training too, because that actually can like really get to certain parts of your body if you let it happen. But you have all these things, like no matter what you do, you've got to limit this and like isolate, and then on top of that, you've got to work out the other part you've neglected. Like if you're working out your calves, then what is that? It's not the tibialis, right? That's up here, right? But whatever it is, no one even works out the thing that is opposite of the calves, and they say it gives you imbalances if you do, so you don't. But you would want to work that out if you got a problem with your calves, but almost no one has problems with calves, so you know that. A lot of it generates from the hip and stuff, the hip, the knees, and the back, and the shoulders. No, let's talk about the neck, but I used to have a lot of neck issues. Like everything I did involved the neck, like lifting involved the neck, moving involved the neck, everything. Like headbanging, concerts, definitely involves the neck. And that's like where I would really notice the most, but I would begin to like work around that stuff. So I've trained my neck more than anything, and you see fighters doing stuff like this before fights, because like to them the neck's so important. They never talk about the neck. There's certain things never talked about, you know. It's generally all I care to talk about. If I know the other people's stuff, what they've been talking about, and good for them. They can sell their videos and stuff like that. And I don't need to cloud up the information with new stuff. But I've experienced a lot of these imbalances from doing one thing and not doing the opposite. Like if I'm just standing there kicking forward for like, you know, like 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, like my muscles are like, first of all, they're developing to go like in this way and stuff, far off from walking or sitting or running. But yeah, so they're not only developing to do that, they're like tearing down, so they're getting sore and they're getting tight. They're getting tight, so they're pulling together the way you're trying to develop it until it heals. The muscle, it gets tight and you pull together. And the harder you work out, you might actually get to a point where like you notice what I'm talking about. Your arm is like really pulling together. Yeah, that's a good workout. Anyways, you not only do that, but then that grows stronger, and then the other side develops, like the bi and the tri. And so the tri would be like less developed, and you would be overdeveloped for like this, and underdeveloped for like that. And it doesn't really matter what you do. Kind of the opposite always matters, because you're even when you come out with the kick and stuff, you're coming back down. Like to me, that's like the hardest part of a kick is coming back down. I can easily bash my leg against something like it's a giant log, but it's like coming back down properly without anything that it's like the real issue. And so if anything, a lot of times I'll go on bags and I'll just situate on the bag, and then I'll come back down, and I'll situate on the bag for a minute, and then I'll come back down, and then I'll like work on coming back down fast. So no matter what you're doing, you're getting these imbalances, but you're also wearing your joints down and stuff. Or, I mean, you might be at some point, right? The bigger thing is just making sure that everything's working right and you don't overuse something and develop some sort of issue somewhere. And I think this is important, obviously, because I've spent so much time like out due to this. Like it's just as important as training to understand the health behind training, because it knocks you out for a while. Like if I work out hard and then I don't eat for like a day, like my body will like really lock up after that, and it's like, wait, you know, you can just tell it's not working right because I didn't eat. But on the days I do work out hard and then I do eat, the next day I might be sore, but I'm not starting to like lock up and get really sore. So you've really got to focus on that. I have a hard time eating, but I notice that when I don't eat after I do something really hard, that it becomes an issue. And yeah. Anyways, So we need to focus on the shoulders. Everything's involved in the shoulders, so you got to limit stuff in certain areas. And what you do for your job is work. Even if it's like light work, it's still like work. And so, like, a lot of people lifting boxes of stacked shelves might end up with back problems and stuff. And they'll go to a therapist, they'll go to a doctor who will send them to a therapist, and then they'll pay like $10,000-$20,000 to learn all this stuff. And then they'll have to spend a bunch of their life doing that as well, because you gotta go to the doctors and then back during their times when they want you to, and that just gets in the way. But it's important, because if you just don't rely on that stuff at all, then you might not even know what's going on. But I have to make sure I'm like really limited in what I do, because like I beat my hands to the point that they're functional these days. They didn't used to always be. It took a couple of years for my hands to be functional after I used them. But these days they're just kind of like swollen. They might get swollen at the knuckles or something. I don't know. You can see like the skin's a little high right there, and it's not high on anything else. I don't even think that's sore anymore. I think that's just something I caused 6 days ago that's like now a permanent swelling in my hand. But like a couple of these are sore and you can't see it because they're like not swollen like this. This one is maybe a little bit, not that one. That one's swelled. It just hasn't down. So maybe it's not going to. Sometimes things change in your body when we're using our weapons as clubs to beat things. So we need to make sure we use this as less as we can. So what I do, if I'm going to strength train, I go into bench pressing with a close shoulder, because what you're going to end up doing is you're going to damage that rotor cuff. You're doing anything you do in the world, you're raising that rotor cuff, you're moving that rotor cuff around. And that is highly involved in things, just like your knees and your lower back are, because they're involved in lifting and moving your body at all times. But your knees are going to take the most, and then the back's going to be centralized. But when it comes to doing things with your hands, this is what you need to protect. So I tend to only go like from the inside here without any flare up. Jeff Athlenax taught me that, but I was already like in therapy and stuff, but he taught me like how to do the moves to make sure I don't involve the actual rotor cuff when I'm doing chest. Like I can barely get my chest to get sore. I don't know, it just doesn't. Like everything else gets sore, and I can just sit there in the chest forever, and it's like everything else is a weak point. But it shouldn't be, because like I've lifted so long, I've trained so long, and I'm pretty strong. But it's because of what I'm talking about in this video, that I probably like really have like just pushed all these muscles from punching for like 4 hours straight every day for like a year or 10 years, however long, you know, you want to break it down and grind. But this year you only did 1 hour or something, whatever. But I noticed like as I took on other things, I had to switch. I couldn't just keep doing the same stuff. And right now I'm currently in the process of like, I've been kind of like eliminating bodybuilding, but not really. I still have my shape, and I'm still like kind of strong and stuff. But I took a huge hit in strength because I stepped away from it. But I did that on purpose because I ramped up the MMA so much. And so like if you come from this video with anything, come from it that you need to focus on what you're doing and what you really want, and the other stuff, make that secondary, right? To me, like, it all kind of matters because I can go any way with it, but what really matters the most currently is me doing martial arts training and stuff like that. So that gets to take all the time, and I've been testing with that a lot, kicking strength training out of my life, and then putting in a lot more martial arts. Because I mean, it's work. Like at the end of the MMA, if I hit the heavy bag for like 4 hours, right, I'm like pretty tired. Like back in Columbus, before I left, I would go to the MMA gym, and then I would go to the gym, hit the heavy bag, come back to the MMA gym and train, you know, a different style or something like that. I was doing that up until I left, but that was like really taxing, right? And I probably should have been sleeping more than I was. My diet was actually more on point back then, but that was like really taxing, and it taught me too that I can keep doing this stuff, but I can start to like shift it around now. Instead of going to the MMA gym, to the strength gym, back to the MMA gym, I just ended up like, well, maybe I'll just stay on the heavy bag for 4 hours straight and see where that takes me. And that really took me to a position where I had no choice but to sit down and heal for a few days. So, but that's been paying off. I mean, in all my videos, like pretty much every time I hit the heavy bag, I notice like something has changed, whether bad or good. Usually both, because I'm like neglecting one field to advance another. And but I notice like I'm still achieving further than I have ever, and changing it around and focusing more on what I want to do has helped considerably. But I'm not sure if stripping the other stuff out is like a logical decision for me to make, because I just don't know. I haven't done it yet. So I'm worried like I could still use that strength training, but at the same time, that's kind of like rehabilitation and conditioning, where we can focus on the parts that we're not using. We come out for the punch, but we ain't snapping back, you know, so we're basically flexing the tricep when we come out like that. And maybe some of the chest too, and some of the shoulder, but that's like, this is the tricep, this is the tricep, right? This is mostly tricep. So that's like mostly tricep when we're coming out. And then I focus on that, and I ask the question, like, how do I prevent myself from hitting myself? Because that does like make me feel stupid when I'm like fighting and I hit myself coming back. And you really need that too to expand with speed as well, to come back like that. When you come back is just as important as coming out. And in fact, like if you're like really battling, like coming back is not I mean, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. If you're boxing, coming back is still your guard. It's still your guard. But coming back is still your guard. But in other martial arts, that turns into a move itself, going into guard. But okay, so I'm gonna close this. But focus on what you want to do. If you want to fight, you want MMA, you know, try not focusing on strength training very much at all, or anything else. You want to play soccer, you want to play football, focus a little less on strength training and work on doing the moves. You want to do football, work on charges, right? What are you, front line, doing a sack, take them to the ground, smash them. Work on that. Don't work on doing a curl. Do a little bit, right? Stay in shape. Just run through real fast. Do some pyramids. That's what I do. Shut it down. And if you want to swim, you know, work on the swimming. Don't work on your freaking you know, bench press. That's what matters. I'd like to see what happens when the MMA fighters take on this. Like, some of them do look like they're training more for fighting, but I've seen some of the behind the scenes. I know a lot of these people are hiding their stuff right now. They don't want other people to see their training methods. But I've seen some of the supposed training methods from, I think, like Brock Lesnar and stuff like that. So people who I trust, and other people should trust in the game. But he was doing a bunch of stuff that wasn't like really MMA related. He was like picking up one of the closest things was like picking up something and running with it. And I see that in a lot of games. And I'm thinking, like, you know, actually doing the stuff, if you just sit there and focus on the actual fight moves, like, that's probably a lot better than picking up and running, or picking up and running with someone else. Like, I don't think these other things are like really as good. They might be developing those muscles, but I find even the slightest change in which direction you're going and what motion you're doing, like this motion versus this motion, like that's like quite a different direction. I can add little altercations where I just flip out, you know, where I just flip out here, and that will feel like a whole new thing. And that's because my body's learning to do exactly what I'm training to do. So if I'm training it to do little drills and other stuff that's not exactly what I want my body to do, my body's learning to curl weights, right? Like I can do an uppercut, but in all honesty, like if I want to practice that, I probably want to practice that, because just thinking I should activate my bicep, like there's a dumbbell in there, I want to hit myself. But, yeah, like I mean that does kind of help, but at the end of the day, what helps more is just actually doing it and learning the joints and how they work with what motion you want to do. Every single little motion. Almost all the therapists I've been into have taught me like one little thing. I just went to another trainer the other day and showed me like one little thing like I wasn't doing right. Like I was like, I'm like out like this, and I should have been like out like this, right? And it just changed the entire motion, and it made it so clearly we were hitting a weak spot, and I couldn't do hardly any at all. I mean, I could barely, like I was worried. You know, it's like, I shouldn't be doing this. I can't do form, because you need to start with like baby weights, 5 or 10 pounds doing this. But anyways, think of that. If you're training for any of this stuff, you see some problems going on in this world. I mean, training is relevant to what's going on in this world, right? And having a good life, and making sure things stay good in life. Thanks for watching, guys. You know, always like and subscribe. I always told I should say that, so I'm gonna start trying to do what I'm told, right, bro? I'll get it right someday. See you guys.